Have you ever had the feeling that someone was following you? Not right up on your heels, not obvious like that, but just close enough. That faint prickle on the back of your neck, that uneasy itch under your skin that tells you something isn't right, even if you can't quite explain why. Most of the time, it's nothing, just nerves, your mind playing tricks on you, but not always. I learned that the hard way. My name's Michael. I'm not what you'd call an athlete, not by a long shot. I'm not training for marathons. I don't have medals hanging on the wall. I run just enough to keep the weight off and keep the heart ticking. And most nights I run with my friend Jay. Jay's one of those guys who always seems to be in shape. The type who never skips leg day, if you know what I mean. He's the one who pushes me to go a little further, a little faster, when I'm ready to quit. For months we had this routine. Late night runs through the neighborhood. After dinner, after the world had settled down. The streets were quiet, peaceful. The glow of the streetlights felt safe, familiar. We live in the kind of place where people wave to each other from their driveways, where folks leave their porch lights on and kids ride their bikes without a worry. Danger? No, not here. But the thing about danger is, it doesn't always make noise when it's coming. Sometimes it waits, quiet, patient, hiding where you'd least expect it. And on one night, one ordinary still night, it was waiting for us. I remember Jay saying we should change up our route. "We're getting too comfortable," he laughed. "Let's push it a bit tonight." So we did. Instead of our usual loop, we decided to take the wooded path, a narrow trail that cuts through the trees before looping back to the main road. It seemed like a good idea at the time, but looking back now, I realized that was the worst decision we ever made, because that was the night I learned. You're not always as alone as you think. The run started out like any other. Jay and I jogged side by side, trading stories about work, life, high school drama, the usual. The first stretch of the path was easy, familiar. We knew every crack in the pavement, every lean-in mailbox, every flicker of the streetlights above. But once we turned off the main road onto the wooded trail, something shifted. You know how some places just feel different at night? The way the dark seems heavier out there between the trees. It presses in on you. Not enough to make you turn back, but just enough to make you notice. It was quiet. Too quiet. No breeze, no crickets, no sound but the soft thud of our sneakers hitting the ground and our breath coming steady. At first, we didn't hear anything strange, but a few minutes in, somewhere between one conversation and the next, Jay slowed a little, holding up a hand. "Wait, do you hear that?" I stopped, listened. There it was. Footsteps behind us. Now, it's not unusual to cross paths with other runners out there. Folks cutting through the trail to get from one side of the neighborhood to the other. So at first, we didn't think much of it. We picked up our pace, light jog turning into a faster run. But the footsteps behind us, they matched our speed, step for step. When we slowed down, just to see if we were imagining it, the sound behind us slowed down too. Jay looked at me. His smile was gone. We didn't say anything, but we both knew. Something wasn't right. We kept moving, a little faster now. The conversation dried up, our focus sharp. I told myself it was just another runner, someone keeping a respectful distance. It had to be, but my gut said otherwise. The trail ahead curved toward the edge of the woods, where it met the well-lit road again. We pushed toward it, eager to get back into the safety of the streetlights. That soft orange glow felt like a promise. The closer we got to the end of the trail, the louder the footsteps sounded behind us. Faster. Closer. Jay glanced back once, then again, eyes squinting into the dark. Nothing, no one, just shadows and trees. We reached the street and finally stopped, turning fully around. The path behind us was empty, silent. Jay let out a breath, half laughing, trying to shake off the tension. "Guess we're just being paranoid," he said, though his voice sounded a little too forced. I wanted to believe him, I really did. But that feeling, the one that crawls up your spine when something's not right, it was still there, clinging to me like a shadow. And as we turned back onto the main road, heading toward the old dirt path at the edge of the neighborhood, I couldn't shake the thought that whoever had been following us might not be gone at all. They might just be waiting. We kept running. The main road stretched out ahead of us, empty and silent under the glow of the streetlights. It should have felt safe out there, away from the trees, away from the shadows. But that uneasy feeling, it didn't leave me. If anything, it was getting worse. Jay, always the optimist, tried to shake it off. "Probably just some kid messing with us," he said, keeping their distance, trying to be funny. I nodded like I agreed, but deep down, I wasn't so sure. We followed the main road out toward the old dirt path, the one that cuts between the farmland and the woods. It's the part of the neighborhood that feels like it belongs to somewhere else entirely. No houses, no lights, just the dirt beneath your feet and the long, dark stretch ahead. We'd run that path before. It was our way of adding a little extra distance when the regular route started feeling too easy. But that night, it didn't feel easy. It felt wrong. The air was colder out there somehow, thicker, still. The only sounds were the crunch of gravel under our shoes and the faint rustling of the trees as the wind stirred their branches overhead. About a mile down the path, Jay finally slowed, waving a hand toward me. "Let's turn back." I was more than ready to agree, but as we turned, just as I pivoted on my heel to face back the way we came, I saw it, a flash of movement, quick, sudden, something or someone darting into the trees on the left side of the path, gone before I could fully register what I was seeing. I froze. "Jay," I said, my voice low, "there's someone out there." Jay stopped beside me, scanning the trees. "I didn't see anything," he muttered. "You sure?" I wanted to doubt myself. I really did. Maybe it was the dark playing tricks on me. Maybe it was nothing but a deer or the wind shifting the branches. But my gut told me otherwise. "There was someone," I said again. "Right there." Jay shook his head, giving me that half smile like I was overthinking it. "You're just spooked, man. You're tired." Maybe I was, but then again, maybe I wasn't. We pressed on, heading back down the dirt path toward the main road, keeping our eyes forward. I tried not to look at the trees, tried not to wonder what might be waiting in the dark between the branches, but the feeling, that sharp, crawling fear, only grew stronger with every step. We were almost back to the road when we heard it. A sudden rustling, maybe 20 feet behind us, loud enough to make us both stop dead in our tracks. We turned, and there, standing in the middle of the dirt road, was a figure, not moving, not speaking, just standing there. His back was to us. A black hoodie pulled up over his head, torn khaki pants, filthy and shredded at the cuffs, black shoes worn down to the sole. Everything about him was wrong, still, silent, facing away, but close enough that we could hear him breathing. Jay's voice cracked as he called out, "Hey, what the hell are you doing?" But before he could finish the sentence, the figure started laughing, and it was the worst sound I've ever heard. It wasn't a normal laugh. It wasn't the kind of laugh you hear at a party or from a friend telling a bad joke. Number. It was raw, broken, ugly. A cackling, jagged sound that seemed to scrape against the night air like nails down a chalkboard. It didn't sound human. Jay and I stood frozen. Neither of us moved. Neither of us spoke. The figure just stood there, back still turned to us, laughing. The sound echoing through the darkness, bouncing off the trees, filling up the space between us like a thick, black fog. Then, just as suddenly as it started, the laughing stopped. Dead silence. The kind of silence that presses into your ears so hard, it almost hurts. And then, slowly, he turned. I will never forget the way he turned. Not fast, not jerky, but slow, purposeful. Like he wanted to make sure we saw every inch of him as he moved. When his face came into view, my stomach dropped. His skin was pale, almost white, like bone under the moonlight. His eyes, wide, too wide, unblinking. There was something wrong with the way he looked at us. It wasn't anger, it wasn't confusion, it was hunger. A cold, empty hunger. Like he wasn't looking at us, but looking through us. Like we weren't people, just something he'd been waiting for. Jay's hand slowly reached out, brushing against my arm. I felt him tense. Neither of us dared to breathe. The man, if you could even call him that, didn't move. He just stared, eyes locked, face blank, head tilted just slightly to the side. We stood there, caught in that awful stare, for what felt like forever. I remember my heartbeat thudding so loud in my ears I could barely hear anything else. My legs were shaking. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to run, but I couldn't. I was frozen. Then, so fast I almost missed it, he twitched. His head snapped sharply back to center, his body jerking like a marionette pulled by strings. That was enough. Jay grabbed my arm hard, pulling me backward. "Run," he whispered. It wasn't loud. It wasn't panicked. It was the voice of someone who knew exactly how bad things were. And so we ran, harder than we ever had before. We didn't look back. We didn't have to. Because as soon as our feet hit the ground, we heard it again. That laugh. Faint at first, then louder, like it was following us, chasing us down the dirt road, growing closer with every step. I could feel my lungs burning, my legs screaming, but I didn't stop. Jay was right beside me, both of us sprinting, gasping for breath, driven by the pure, raw terror that if we slowed down, even for a second, he would catch us. The night around us seemed to close in, the trees leaning closer as we tore down the path, the sound of our footfalls pounding against the earth. But underneath it all, always that laugh, getting closer. When we finally broke free of the dirt path and hit the pavement of the main road, I dared one quick glance over my shoulder. Nothing, no one. The road behind us was empty, but that laugh, that awful bone-chilling laugh, still echoed in my head, even as the night fell silent again. We didn't stop running until we reached my house. When we finally stumbled through the back door, I collapsed onto the floor, choking for air, my heart racing so hard I thought it might tear through my chest. Jay slammed the door shut behind us, locked every lock, dropped the garage door, checked the windows twice. Neither of us said a word. We didn't have to. We both knew exactly what we had just escaped. But the truth is, I don't think we really did. Because even now, years later, when I step outside at night, I swear I can still hear that laugh. Somewhere, out there in the dark, waiting. We sat there in my kitchen for a long time. Neither of us said much. The only sounds were the faint hum of the refrigerator and our ragged breathing still trying to settle down. Jay kept glancing at the windows, as if expecting to see that figure staring back at us from the other side of the glass. I couldn't blame him. I was doing the same thing. Even with every door locked, every window latched, the garage shut tight, I didn't feel safe. Not really. There was this awful sinking feeling inside me, like we'd brought something back with us, like whatever had been out there might still be close, watching, waiting. Jay finally broke the silence. "What the hell was that?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I didn't have an answer. I still don't. Was it just some sick person playing games, a drifter, a lunatic out there in the dark? Or was it something worse, something not quite human? I know how that sounds. I know how easy it is to dismiss that kind of thought as fear talking, but I also know what I saw. I know what I felt. The way that figure moved, the way he stared at us without blinking, without breathing heavy even after we'd been running. The way his laugh echoed, chasing us down the road, louder when it should have been fading away. It wasn't right. None of it was right. That night changed something in me. It's been years now. Jay and I never ran that route again. In fact, we stopped running at night altogether. I still go out sometimes, but only during the day. And I always stay where the light is, where there are people, where I can see the faces of everyone around me. Because here's the truth. The world feels safe until it doesn't. And when that moment comes, when the floor drops out from under you and the air feels too heavy to breathe, you realize how fast safety can disappear. I think about that sometimes. How easy it is to fall into a routine, to get comfortable, to tell yourself, nothing bad could happen here. But bad things don't wait for the wrong neighborhood. They don't check your zip code. Sometimes, they're already here, right outside your door, right down your street. Sometimes, they're standing just 20 feet behind you. So, if you're someone who likes to run at night, like we did, I'm not here to tell you to stop. But I am here to tell you this. Stay where it's well lit. Stay where there are people. And always, always listen to that little voice in your head. The one that tells you when something feels off. Because sometimes that feeling is the only warning you'll ever get. If you've ever had a moment like this, if you've ever felt that strange chill, that sense that someone was watching you, I'd like to hear your story. Share it in the comments below. And stay safe out there. You never know who might be right behind you. Have you ever told yourself, it's fine, nothing bad could happen here? We all do it. It's human nature. We tell ourselves we're safe because it's familiar, because it's home, because bad things only happen to other people, somewhere else. But the truth is, danger doesn't need a reason. It doesn't wait for the wrong neighborhood. Sometimes, it's already standing right beside you. I was 17, a junior in high school, the kind of girl who believed she was smart enough to know better. I ran cross country and track, not the fastest on the team, but steady, reliable, the kind of endurance that makes you feel a little untouchable. I was proud of that. Out on the road, moving fast, feeling strong. It made me believe I could handle anything. I wasn't reckless, just confident, maybe a little too confident. There's a woman who lives just outside of town, near the edge of the old forest preserve, way out where the paved roads turn to gravel, where houses sit far apart, separated by fields and winding fences. She had this wild little puppy, Izzy, a bundle of pure energy who needed long runs to stay sane. She offered me $10 a run if I could wear the dog out a few times a week. It sounded perfect. Get paid to do what I was already doing, running. The area was quiet, peaceful even. You could go for miles without seeing another person. Just the soft rustle of the trees in the breeze, the steady rhythm of your footsteps on the road, the easy pant of a happy dog at your side. It felt safe, safer than safe. It felt like freedom. Out there, with the wind on my face and the road stretching wide in front of me, I felt untouchable. I didn't worry about strangers, didn't think twice about the abandoned farms tucked behind the hills, didn't pay attention to the stories about the old cemetery hidden in the woods, or the whispers of a long-gone cult that once gathered in those fields. Because those were just stories, the kind of thing people tell to scare kids. I told myself, nothing bad could happen here. Over and over again I believed it. Until the night. Everything changed. It was just before dusk. That soft, golden hour where the sun hangs low over the treetops and the whole world feels like it's glowing. The road was empty, the air cool against my skin, and Izzy was tugging at the leash like she always did, eager, ready to go. I clipped the leash to her collar, tied my laces, stretched out my legs the way my coach always taught me. Routine, familiar, comfortable. Nothing about that evening felt wrong. We started down the gravel road, the sky turning this deep orange behind the silhouette of the trees. Izzy's paws pattered against the ground, her tongue hanging out in a happy, eager grin. I could hear the faint chirp of crickets warming up for the night, the occasional flutter of birds overhead. Other than that, silence. It was the kind of silence you don't notice right away, the kind that creeps up on you. I've always loved running at that time of day. There's a peace in it, a quiet rhythm that settles into your bones, the steady beat of your shoes hitting the earth, your breath falling into sync with the world around you. And out here, at the edge of the forest preserve, there was nothing to interrupt that rhythm. No traffic, no voices, no distractions, just space. It felt like the perfect kind of freedom. The houses grew fewer and farther between as we moved down the road. Fences gave way to tall grass and thick clusters of trees leaning in over the path. I could just make out the crooked posts of an old, abandoned gate off to the side, the entrance to one of those empty farms people in town like to gossip about. I didn't give it much thought. Why would I? The only thing on my mind was the run, my pace, my breathing, keeping Izzy from darting after every rabbit and squirrel that crossed our path. I could feel the sweat starting to bead at my temples, the good kind of ache building in my calves. The road dipped, winding between two thick walls of trees where the shadows seemed to stretch longer than they should. Izzy slowed, her ears perking up. I tugged lightly at the leash. "Come on, girl." But she didn't move. She stood stock still, eyes locked on the trees to our right. Her body went stiff, tail tucked low between her legs, a soft whimper escaping her throat. That's when I noticed the quiet. No birds, no crickets, no wind. The world had gone still. Too still. I followed Izzy's gaze, scanning the tree line. At first, there was nothing but the tangle of branches swaying gently in the breeze. Nothing but the soft rustle of leaves shifting high above. But then, between two trunks, half hidden in the shadows, I saw him. Just a face, peeking out from behind a tree, eyes locked on me, unblinking, watching. At first, I tried to tell myself he was just a hiker, maybe a hunter, someone out late watching the trail, maybe waiting for a deer to cross. But something about him, something about the way he stood there, half hidden behind the tree, staring so still, so quietly. It made the hair on my arms stand straight up. He wasn't moving, not shifting his weight, not adjusting his footing, just standing perfectly still. his eyes locked on me. I gave him a quick nod, that polite, nervous kind of acknowledgement you give when you don't want to seem rude. But you're not about to invite conversation either. He didn't nod back, didn't blink, didn't even flinch, just kept staring. I swallowed hard, feeling that tight little knot start to form in my stomach. It's fine, I told myself. He's probably just some guy, maybe out here for the same reason I am, enjoying the quiet. But even as I thought it, I knew I didn't believe it. Izzy still hadn't moved. She stood frozen at my side, her body rigid, tail tucked so tightly I could feel her shaking through the leash. "Let's go," I whispered, giving the leash a gentle tug. Izzy resisted for just a second longer, then finally, slowly, started to move with me again, her head still turned toward the trees, eyes wide. I picked up my pace, forcing my breathing to stay steady. I kept my eyes on the road ahead, refusing to look back. Don't make it a thing, I told myself. Don't give him a reason to follow. Don't show him you're scared. But my mind wouldn't let it go. Why hadn't he moved? Why hadn't he looked away, even for a second? The farther we ran, the quieter it seemed to get. The soft rustle of the leaves faded. The chirp of the crickets fell silent. It was just me, Izzy, and the sound of my own heartbeat thudding louder than my footsteps. I made it a quarter mile before I risked a glance over my shoulder. The trees behind us looked empty. The road was clear, but that knot in my stomach, it only got tighter. We rounded a bend where the road split, one path leading back toward the houses, the other deeper into the woods. I debated turning home early. I should have. I know that now. But at the time, I kept going. Maybe out of habit, maybe out of pride. I'm fast enough, I told myself again. I can outrun anything. But just as the thought crossed my mind, Izzy stopped dead in her tracks again. A low, nervous growl rumbled from her throat. This time, I didn't need to ask why, because as I turned back toward the woods, scanning the line of trees, there he was, not behind the tree anymore, not hiding. Standing right at the edge of the forest now, closer, watching. His head tilted slightly to the side, like he was studying me, like he wanted me to know. There's a moment, a very specific moment, when your body knows you're in danger before your mind can catch up. It's not a thought, it's not even fear, not at first. It's instinct. The kind of instinct buried deep in your bones, hardwired into your muscles. The part of you that remembers what it means to be prey. That was the feeling that slammed into me the moment I saw him standing there, no longer half hidden, no longer just watching from the shadows. He was at the tree line now, closer than before, still staring, still motionless. But his head, that slight tilt, like a curious animal deciding whether or not to pounce. Izzy started to growl louder, her body stiff as a board, tail tucked so tight I could feel the vibration of her fear through the leash. I should have turned and run right then, but I froze. I stood there, locked in place, my eyes glued to his, trying to make sense of what I was seeing, trying to tell myself this was still nothing, just a weird guy, just someone being creepy, nothing more. But then he moved, sudden, sharp. He stepped out from the trees, his arms swinging loose at his sides, the dull gleam of something heavy clutched in his right hand. It took me a second to understand what I was looking at, but when the last light of the sun caught the edge of the blade, wide, square, heavy, I knew, a butcher's cleaver, held low, fingers wrapped tight around the handle. My breath caught in my throat, and then he started to run. Not a jog, not a stumble, but a full wild sprint. Arms flailing, legs moving fast, too fast, in this strange, jerky, almost unnatural motion. His body didn't move like a runner. It moved like something that wasn't used to running at all. Like something that had only ever chased. I didn't think, I didn't plan, I just ran. Every part of me screamed to move, and I listened. I turned hard, yanking Izzy's leash so fast she nearly toppled over, scrambling to keep up. The road stretched out ahead of me, but it felt so far away. All I could hear was my own breath tearing out of my lungs, loud, ragged gasps, and the pounding thud of my feet hitting the ground. And behind that, the sound of his footsteps, heavy, uneven, getting closer. I didn't dare look back. I couldn't. I knew if I did, I might trip. I might slow down. And if I slowed down, even for a second, I was done. Izzy struggled to keep pace, the leash jerking in my grip as I dragged her along beside me. Her paws skidded against the gravel as we rounded the bend where the road split. I didn't go toward the houses. I didn't head home. Instinct pushed me toward the open fields instead, away from the obvious paths. I cut across the tall grass, dodging between fences, zigzagging through backyards, praying I could lose him. My lungs burned, my legs screamed, but I didn't stop. The panic was so loud in my head, I almost didn't notice the strangest thing of all. I couldn't hear him breathing. I could hear my gasps. I could hear Izzy's frantic panting. But from him, nothing. Just the wild, steady hammer of his boots slamming into the ground behind me. No breath, no voice. Only the silence of something that was never meant to chase, but was chasing anyway. I don't remember making the decision to turn off the road. I don't remember thinking about which way to go. I just knew I couldn't stay out in the open. So I cut across the grass, vaulted a low fence, and sprinted into one of the backyards that dotted the edge of the field. The houses here were scattered, some with long driveways, others tucked behind tall hedges and rusted wire fences, too far apart for anyone to hear me scream. But I wasn't about to stop and call for help. Not yet. I pushed my body harder than I ever had before, muscles burning, lungs raw. Izzy stumbled beside me, her tiny legs struggling to keep up, but somehow she managed to stay with me. I ducked between two old sheds, heart hammering so loud I thought for sure he could hear it. I pressed my back flat against the rough wooden wall, trying to swallow down the gasps tearing out of my chest. Silence. I held my breath, listening. Nothing. No footsteps pounding behind me. No crack of branches breaking under heavy boots. No ragged breath from someone chasing. Just the quiet hiss of the wind moving through the tall grass. I stayed frozen for what felt like hours, my body shaking, sweat dripping down my spine. Slowly, carefully, I turned my head, peeking out from behind the edge of the shed. And that's when I saw him, at the top of the hill, maybe 50 yards away, standing perfectly still. The cleaver still dangling from his hand, loose, like he wasn't holding it tight anymore. His shoulders slumped just slightly, his head down, but his eyes were still on me. There was no rage on his face now, no madness, no grin, just that blank, empty stare, as if he'd simply lost interest. A pair of headlights appeared far off down the road, a car making its slow way toward the neighborhood, the beams cutting through the last of the evening light. And just like that, he turned. No rush, no panic. He just stepped back into the trees. Gone. I stayed hidden for a long time after that. Long enough to be sure I wouldn't see him again. Long enough to let my hands stop shaking. When I finally worked up the courage to move, I slipped through the yards, keeping low, cutting back toward the woman's house through the side streets where no one would see me. I knocked on her door like nothing had happened. I smiled, took my payment, told her Izzy had been great on the run. I didn't tell her what I saw. I didn't tell my parents either, because I knew what they'd say. I knew what they'd do. They'd never let me run alone again. And back then, running was my freedom. But I never ran that route again, not once, because sometimes when I close my eyes at night, I can still see him, standing at the top of that hill, watching, waiting. Looking back now, I still wonder what would have happened if I had slowed down, if I had tripped, if I had made one wrong turn. I've replayed that night in my head more times than I can count. Every glance, every footstep, every second I spent trying to outrun the man with the cleaver, and the fear that chased me even harder. The truth is, I'll never know what he really wanted. Maybe he was just some sick person looking to scare the hell out of a teenage girl. Maybe he was something worse. Maybe he wasn't even fully human at all. But here's what I do know. I was lucky. And luck is not a safety plan. For a long time, I kept this story to myself. I didn't want to admit how scared I'd been. I didn't want anyone to tell me I shouldn't have been out there alone. I didn't want to lose the thing I love most, the freedom of the run. But freedom without caution, that's not strength. That's just a gamble. So, if you're like me, if you love to run, to walk, to wander the quiet roads alone, I'm not here to scare you out of it. But I am here to tell you, listen to your gut. Trust that small, quiet voice when it tells you something isn't right. And never, ever let confidence blind you to danger. Because sometimes, evil doesn't come crashing in with loud footsteps. Sometimes, it waits. That could never happen here. How many times have you told yourself that? Not on my street, not in my town, not to my family. It's the story we like to believe, the one we tell ourselves so we can sleep at night. Because the truth, the real truth, is much harder to live with. The truth is, monsters don't always hide in dark alleys or big cities. Sometimes they sit quietly in broad daylight. Sometimes they smile and wave from the front seat of a white SUV, parked just down the road from your house. I was 9 years old the first time I saw him. It was an ordinary afternoon, nothing special about it. The sky was clear. The air smelled like cut grass. My little brother and I were walking our dogs toward the edge of the neighborhood, talking about video games and homework the way kids do. We weren't looking for trouble. And in a place like this, a small, peaceful suburb surrounded by farms and open land, trouble wasn't supposed to find us, but it did. The SUV was parked at the corner where our street meets the main road. The man inside had curly blonde hair. I remember that clearly. He leaned out the window, smiling, waving casually. "Hey, come here," he called. My brother took a step toward him without thinking, the way kids do when an adult calls out. But something inside me, something I couldn't explain at 9 years old, told me to grab his arm and pull him back. I didn't know why. I just knew. We turned and walked away, fast. When I told my mom about it later, she shook her head and smiled. "Probably just wanted directions," she said. And maybe she was right. Maybe it was nothing. But it didn't feel like nothing. It felt like the first ripple on the surface of still water, the small warning that something was lurking just beneath. I didn't know then that this wouldn't be the last time I'd see him. I didn't know this was only the start of something much bigger. Because some predators aren't in a hurry. The smart ones wait. They take their time. They learn your patterns, your habits, your roots. They're patient. And by the time you realize they've been watching, it might already be too late. This isn't just the story of one bad moment. It's the story of 7 long years. 7 years of strange encounters, quiet warnings, and a growing fear I couldn't shake. 7 years before I finally understood what was happening. 7 years before I stopped telling myself, that could never happen here. I wish I could tell you that I trusted my instincts right away, that I knew from the very first moment what was really happening. But the truth is, I didn't. I wanted to believe it was nothing. I wanted to believe my mom was right, that he was just some lost driver asking for directions, a face I'd never have to see again. And for a little while, I did believe that. But then came Halloween. It was the following year, and I was 10. Our neighborhood always did Halloween big. Decorations on every porch, kids running up and down the streets, parents chatting at the ends of driveways. It was supposed to feel safe, but that night, the whispers started. Someone had spotted a black sedan slowly creeping behind groups of trick-or-treaters. No headlights, no plates at the car. A few adults went over to confront the driver, but when they got close, the car hit the gas and sped off into the dark. I didn't see it happen, but I heard about it. We all did. Another, probably nothing, the grown-ups said. Some teenager playing a prank, or a neighbor keeping an eye on the kids. But I couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't a coincidence. The SUV from the year before. Now, a black sedan with no plates. Both watching, waiting. Still. I let it go. I was just a kid after all. What could I do except trust the adults around me to keep us safe? Years passed. The memory of the man in the SUV, the stories about the black car. They faded into the background like a bad dream. Until the summer I turned 14. It was the kind of summer where the days feel endless, the air thick with heat, the nights quiet except for the sound of crickets. Our neighbors went out of town for a few weeks and asked if I could pet sit for them. 3 times a day, in and out of their house, letting their dog out into the yard. Simple enough. The house sat off the main road, a little more isolated than most. No nearby houses, no traffic, just the long driveway and the woods behind it. One night, later than I should have been out, I walked the dog into the yard and glanced toward the road. There it was, a black sedan sitting parked just past the driveway. Engine off, lights off. At first, I thought maybe I'd missed it pulling in. Maybe it belonged to someone nearby. But there were no nearby houses, no reason for a car to be there at all. I stood frozen for a minute, watching. No one got out, no one moved, the car just sat there. Eventually, I took the dog back inside, locked the door behind me, and decided I'd cut through the woods on my way home, just to be safe. I told myself it was probably nothing. But in my gut, I knew. I just wasn't ready to admit it yet. If it had only happened once, I probably would have let it go. Even twice. Maybe I could have written it off as coincidence. But it didn't happen once. It didn't happen twice. It kept happening. Quiet, subtle, easy to dismiss if you wanted to. And for a long time, I wanted to. I wanted so badly to believe that I was overthinking it, that maybe I'd seen too many horror movies, that maybe it really was just a car, just a stranger, just bad timing. But deep down, I knew. I started to notice the pattern the summer I turned 16. Quarantine had shut everything down. No school, no practice, no track team. So I ran alone, every day, same roads, same routes. It was the only thing that kept me sane. The rhythm of my feet on the pavement, the heat of the summer air filling my lungs. The streets were emptier than usual, fewer cars, fewer people, except for one, the white SUV. I noticed it first on a Tuesday, parked at the far end of the road, engine running, driver behind the wheel. I ran past it, didn't think much of it, but the next day, it was there again. Different spot, same car. The day after that, same thing. Always at a distance, always just sitting there. The SUV never followed directly behind me, never came too close. But wherever I turned, wherever I decided to run that day, somehow it was already there. I told myself maybe it was just someone with a routine like mine. Maybe their commute happened to line up with my run, so I changed my time. Instead of running in the morning, I went in the afternoon. No SUV for one day. The next afternoon, there it was again. This time parked at the start of a driveway, waiting. I changed my route, took side streets I didn't usually use. The SUV reappeared, always parked where the roads opened up, always where it could sit and watch without being obvious. At first, I tried not to let it get to me. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't want to sound paranoid, but I started to feel it in my chest, that tightening, that creeping dread that makes your skin itch. Because the more I paid attention, the more I realized. It wasn't just the SUV. Some days it was the black sedan again, tucked along the side of the road, plates removed. Other days, it was parked by the cemetery entrance, or idling at the far end of a dead-end street. Always close enough to be seen, never close enough to accuse. It felt deliberate, calculated, like they wanted me to notice, but not enough for me to prove it. I started to avoid the main roads altogether, cut through back paths, trails behind the houses, anywhere I could move without being so exposed. But even then, sometimes I'd catch a glimpse through the trees, the curve of a white hood, the flash of chrome in the sun. I told myself I was imagining it. I told myself it couldn't be real, but my gut told me otherwise. It told me the watching had never stopped. It told me this wasn't random, and I was starting to believe it. It was the 11th day, 11 straight days of running, 11 straight days of feeling eyes on my back. I was tired, not just from the miles, but from the waiting to see if today would be different, waiting to prove to myself that maybe, just maybe, I was wrong. I wasn't. I left the house later than usual that morning, deliberately changing my routine again. I thought maybe if I kept shifting the pattern, whoever was out there would give up, lose interest, but they didn't. When I turned down one of the side streets, I saw it again. The white SUV, parked at the top of the hill, half hidden by an overgrown hedge, sitting there, waiting. I felt my throat tighten, my stomach drop. I told myself, don't panic, stick to the plan. I had decided that if I ever saw it again, I'd take the cul-de-sac down at the end of Briar Lane. It's a dead-end street, small and quiet, with just a handful of houses. Easy to circle back, easy to loop around and head home fast. So I turned down Briar Lane. At first, nothing seemed unusual. No cars parked along the curb, no movement. Just the sound of my feet tapping against the pavement, my breath steady but shallow. But as I neared the end of the street, my heart dropped into my stomach. There it was, the black sedan, sitting right at the mouth of the cul-de-sac, parked low, quiet, plates missing. But this time, I saw something else, a shadow, low to the ground, tucked beneath the car. At first, I couldn't quite process what I was looking at, but then the shape shifted. There was someone crouched under the sedan, hiding, waiting. I stopped dead. I felt my legs lock, my chest seize up. Every instinct told me to turn and run. But when I turned back toward the entrance of the street, the SUV was there. It had moved. Now parked at the top of Briar Lane, blocking the exit, I could see the man behind the wheel, the same curly blonde hair I remembered from when I was 9, The same smile, faint, like he was pleased with himself. The driver's side door cracked open, and then he stepped out. I didn't wait. I ran, harder than I ever had in my life. I cut between two of the houses at the end of the street, leaping over a fence, crashing through someone's backyard. I could hear shouting behind me, the man's voice calling out, "Hey, come back! I just want to talk." But I wasn't about to stop and listen. I zigzagged through the yards, taking sharp turns, forcing myself not to look back. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears, my breath ragged, my legs burning. But I pushed through it. I ran like my life depended on it, because I knew it did. When I finally burst back onto the main road, I didn't stop. I sprinted all the way home, locked the door behind me, and collapsed onto the floor, gasping for air. It was over, at least for that day. But deep down, I knew the truth. This hadn't been random. It hadn't been coincidence. It had been planned. They had been waiting for the right moment. And today, they thought they'd found it. I didn't tell my mom right away. Honestly, I wasn't sure how. How do you explain that feeling? The certainty that someone has been hunting you, that you've been prey all along, and you just didn't know it? I paced my room for a long time that night, the adrenaline still pulsing under my skin, my hands shaking so bad I couldn't hold a glass of water steady. I kept replaying the morning in my head, the white SUV at the top of the hill, the man stepping out, smiling like it was all some harmless misunderstanding, the black sedan waiting at the end of the cul-de-sac, the shape crouched low beneath it, like a trap ready to spring. It didn't feel like a fluke. It felt rehearsed, practiced. It felt like they had done this before, and that thought chilled me more than anything else. When I finally told my mom the next day, I half expected her to give me the same answer as before. It was probably nothing. But this time, the look on her face changed. She listened, really listened, and then she called the police. I sat on the edge of the couch while she explained what I'd told her, my foot tapping against the floor so fast I could barely sit still. The officer on the phone asked the usual questions. Did I get a plate number? No, the plates were missing. Could I describe the driver? Yes, white male, blonde curls, average build, same face I'd seen 7 years ago. They took the report, promised to increase patrols in the area, said they'd keep an eye out. But without a plate, without hard evidence, there wasn't much they could do. I get it. I understand how the system works, but that didn't make it any easier to sleep at night. Because knowing there's someone out there, someone who's been watching, waiting, tracking your every move, and knowing that no one can stop them, that's a different kind of fear. It's the kind of fear that settles into your bones, the kind that doesn't go away when you lock the doors or turn on the lights. I stopped running after that, at least not alone, not outside. I stuck to the treadmill in the basement, where no one could watch, where no one could wait for me. But even now, years later, I still flinch when I see a white SUV. I still check twice when I round a corner, still feel that prickle on the back of my neck when I'm out after dark. Because monsters don't always lunge out of the shadows. Sometimes they wait, patient, quiet, right there on your street. I've spent a lot of time thinking about these stories, not just my own, but the stories of others too. The girl who thought speed would keep her safe, the two friends who believed the quiet streets of their neighborhood were enough to protect them, and me, the kid who spent 7 years telling himself that monsters wouldn't come here. But here's what I've learned. Danger doesn't always look like danger. It doesn't always wear a mask or carry a sign. Sometimes it smiles at you from across the street. Sometimes it waits patiently, quietly, until the exact moment you let your guard down. I used to think that strength meant confidence, that believing you were untouchable somehow made you safer, that being fast enough, smart enough, careful enough was enough. But it isn't. The truth is, confidence without caution is just another kind of weakness. And the hardest part of all? It's admitting that the world isn't as safe as we want it to be, that bad things can happen anywhere, not just in some distant city, not just to strangers on the news. They can happen here, to people like me, to people like you. It doesn't mean we should live in fear, but it does mean we need to stay aware, to listen to that little voice inside when it tells us something feels off. Because instincts are there for a reason. They're the oldest kind of wisdom we have. The warning system that too many of us have learned to ignore because we don't want to seem rude or paranoid or dramatic. If there's one thing these stories have taught me, it's this. Don't ignore that feeling. If the hairs on the back of your neck stand up, if your stomach twists in that awful way, if your gut tells you something isn't right, believe it. You can always apologize later if you're wrong, but you may not get the chance if you're right. Stay in the light, stay alert, stay safe. And remember, it's not about being fast. It's not about being fearless. It's about being prepared, because evil doesn't always come crashing in. Sometimes, it waits. If you've stayed with me through this story, thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for giving your time to hear these words, these warnings, these hard-learned lessons. I know these aren't easy stories to hear, but they're important, because too often we talk ourselves out of fear. We tell ourselves we're imagining things. We stay polite when we should trust our instincts. We let that uneasy feeling drift by without acting on it, because we don't want to make a scene. But staying safe sometimes means making that scene. It means listening to the voice inside that says, something's not right. It means believing that your life, your safety, is worth more than someone else's comfort. If these stories made you pause, if they made you think twice about your surroundings, your habits, your sense of security, then I hope they've done their job. And if you've ever had an experience like this, a moment when you knew deep down that you weren't alone, even when no one else believed you, I want to hear your story. Because stories like these aren't just mine. They belong to all of us. And the more we talk about them, the more we share, the more we learn to trust ourselves and each other. So, if you feel comfortable, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever had a close call? A moment that still makes your skin crawl when you remember it? And if this story spoke to you, if you found something valuable here, I'd be grateful if you take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone you care about. It helps us keep telling these stories. It helps these warnings reach the people who need to hear them most. Thank you again for spending this time with me. Thank you for listening, not just with your ears, but with your heart. Stay safe, stay aware, stay ready, because sometimes the scariest things aren't the ones that jump out at you. Sometimes the scariest things are the ones that wait.